Hey there y'all, it's Megan. If you're returning to my channel, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome aboard. So today is another Disney trivia and history video. Today I am doing Lilo and Stitch because it came out 17 years ago, this week-ish, and also 17 years ago I moved to Hawaii. So we saw the movie and it was like, oh, this is a movie about Hawaii right before we're moving to Hawaii, and I thought it was really interesting and really fun. And I was like, I am Lilo and I'm going to go and have all these adventures. I didn't have all the adventures. I didn't meet an alien that I adopted and all that. But I have always really liked Lilo and Stitch. It's always been a movie that I feel is kind of one of the underrated ones that people don't really talk about that much, and I still really, really love. So today we are gonna do Lilo and Stitch. So we'll start with kind of the history and like the making of the movie. The idea for Lilo and Stitch kind of originated with Stitch as a character, and it was Chris Sanders, who was the director and the co-writer and the co-character designer and also the voice of Stitch, who came up with the idea for a children's book featuring Stitch in 1985, and it never got past the pitch. It was, you know, he pitched this kid's book and it failed and it was never created. But then later they made it into a movie, and now we have Lilo and Stitch, and I think that it's probably better as a movie than it would have been as a book. But so that's how the idea originated. It started off a long time ago, and they didn't really get back to it for quite a while, and the story itself changed a lot in the process of the storyboarding and all of that. Stitch went from a very like violent, kind of scary character all the way to the cute, cuddly, fluffy, cute and fluffy character that we know and love. So he had some changes. The story changed. Jumbo was originally going to be like part of a gang with Stitch, and so they changed a lot of things, and I think that it's kind of come out for the better. I think that the whole theme of Lilo and Stitch now, instead of being just like an alien fighting movie, it's really about family and how your family can be people from lots of different places. They don't have to be just related to you. They can be from outer freaking space, maybe. So the story really, really changed a lot. But the thing that I think is very interesting about the creation of Lilo and Stitch is it was the first movie since Dumbo, which we just talked about, and I'll link that up there if you haven't seen it yet. It was the first movie since Dumbo to use watercolor backgrounds because they wanted it to be a kind of like lower cost, less expensive, small scale kind of movie, because it was coming off of the Disney Renaissance. And the Disney Renaissance was big bucks, big show value, lots of money was made because it was awesome movies, you know, Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, all of those, Beauty and the Beast, the Disney Renaissance. And then they got to the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, and they had Emperor's New Groove, which was another one that was like a lot of money, big budget, big cast names, kind of didn't do so hot. And then Atlantis, same thing. They put a lot of money into it, but it just didn't perform at the box office on its initial run. So coming off of that, Michael Eisner, who was the CEO of Disney at the time, said, you know what, let's scale it back. Let's do like we did with Dumbo in 1940. You know, we came off of Fantasia and Pinocchio kind of not being so hot, and we made Dumbo, and Dumbo was awesome. They were like, let's try that with this one. So they did a lower budget. They did the simple backgrounds. They didn't have the character depth and development physically like the animation style, and it worked. So Lilo and Stitch became the first of only 2 movies in the 2000s that actually made back money on the initial run. The other one being Princess and the Frog in '09, which is, Princess and the Frog, so good. Another thing about the making of the movie, which is interesting and simultaneously very sad, is they had to change the ending pretty soon before, or pretty close to the opening of the movie. If you have noticed at the end during the flight chase scene with Jumba and Stitch and Gantu, Gantu's ship looks a lot like a Boeing 747, and that's because in the original animation, what was planned was it was going to be a Boeing 747, and it was going to, Jumba and Stitch would have hijacked that from the airport, and then they were going to fly it all through Honolulu, and they were going to be crashing into buildings and taking people out and stuff. But obviously This movie came out in June of 2002, which means they were animating around September of 2001. So once the terrorist attacks in New York on September 11th happened, they were like, this is too similar, too parallel, too soon. We can't do anything like that. So the buildings got changed to mountains. They took out all the people that were screaming and running, except for the one guy sitting in the valley trying desperately to eat that ice cream cone, bless his heart. He's the only person that is still in that scene. So no one is getting hurt. There was no hijacking. There was no buildings being taken down by planes. So that was something that they really had to modify kind of quickly, and you can still see that the ship looks a lot like an actual airplane. So some of the trivia about Lilo and Stitch, I mentioned that they kind of harkened back to Dumbo and the way that they wanted to do a lower budget, you know, watercolor background, simpler storyline kind of movie. Dumbo makes an appearance in the Lilo and Stitch scene where there's the falling star when Stitch is first plummeting to earth, and Lilo runs over to the window to make a wish. There is a Dumbo plush sitting up on the shelf, and I'll try to put a picture in here so you can see him. But Dumbo was his own little type of outcast, and he felt different, and he didn't feel like he belonged, and so Stitch kind of feels that way too a lot of the movie. So Stitch and Dumbo kind of have more similarities than just their backgrounds. A little Easter egg kind of thing. Lilo and Stitch, not just Stitch. Lilo and Stitch was the second movie to be made at the Orlando studios. So if you went to MGM or anything in the late 90s, you probably saw all of the Mulan stuff, because Mulan was the first movie that they made in the studios there. So they took some things from Mulan and they kind of tossed it into Lilo and Stitch as Easter eggs. When they are walking down the street, you can see that there's a restaurant called Mulan Walk, and also obviously there is a poster of Mulan on Nani's wall. They just tossed a little Mulan in there just to nod at the other movie that at the time had been made at the Orlando studios. We all know that I love when other characters make an appearance in not their Disney movies, or when characters are inspired by other Disney movies. So the ones that stand out the most in this one are some of the aliens are modeled after Winnie the Pooh characters. And you can definitely tell Tigger and Piglet when they are doing their tracking of Stitch and trying to figure out where he's going. You can see that one of the aliens looks like Tigger and one looks a little bit too much like Piglet. My other favorite thing about trivia is seeing what voice actors are part of animated movies. And one of the great Disney voice actors of the late 90s was, of the 90s, the Disney Renaissance and stuff, was David Ogden Stiers, who unfortunately just passed away a couple of years ago. But he was the voice of Jumba. So if you listen to Jumba, you're probably going, I know that voice. Why do I know that voice? He is General Radcliffe from Pocahontas, also Wiggins, but mainly you hear Radcliffe. And he is also Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast. And this was actually his final Disney movie that he worked on. Another very distinctive voice is that of Cobra Bubbles, who is played by Ving Rhames. And you probably know Ving Rhames best right now anyway as the Arby's dude that says we have the meats. That's Ving Rhames. But his character of Cobra Bubbles was modeled heavily after his character Marcellus in Pulp Fiction, which if you are a younger subscriber, don't recommend. Don't go watch that. Wait a few years. But that was what Cobra Bubbles was modeled after, was good old Marcellus Wallace, down to the earring that he wears. So that is the trivia and the history and stuff about Lilo and Stitch. And I mentioned earlier that Lilo and Stitch has always kind of had like a soft place in my heart. It's always been pretty important to me, and I always have really liked the message of family. So I actually, if you have been paying attention, I always wear this necklace, and let's see if we can get up there. It is inspired by Lilo and Stitch. It's got a little gold plumeria there, and it is modeled after the scene where Nani and Lilo are in the hammock and the plumeria blossoms are all around and they're singing Aloha Oi. So that's modeled after that, and then on the bottom it says Ohana means family. So that is something I always wear. And if you don't know me in real life, you probably didn't know that I got a tattoo a little while back. And if you don't like tattoos, totally fine. My parents are not fans, ironically enough. But I did get a tattoo on my foot that says Ohana. It's something that I've wanted for a long time, and I finally just went ahead and did it. That would be my cat's litter box. And if you have not ever seen a litter robot, those little guys are pretty fantastic. So yeah, let's let it do its thing. Hang on. So, like I was saying, I'm going to show you my tattoo. It's on my foot, so if you don't like tattoos or you don't like looking at feet or anything, like, we'll see you later. No worries. But let me see if I can get my little footsie up here. So there it is. That is my awkward foot, and it says Ohana. It's just a word, so there's not really that much you can say about it. Lilo and Stitch history trivia. And I will, like I mentioned, I'll have a couple more trivia videos lined up, and I will get those out soon. If you have suggestions for those, as always, leave them down below. Do you have a favorite Disney quote that means something to you? Do you have any Disney tattoos? If you are a tattoo fan, let me know that down below too. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.